Hi there, welcome to my HTML lecture. The resource is, and the lecture is based on the book called HTML and CSS, Design and Build Websites by John Duckett. The first 9 chapters. This is the agenda for today. We're going to start with defining HTML and explain the purpose of it. Then we look into what are tags or versus elements, and looking into the basic structure of any HTML page. And then we look into the main tags of HTML, so you can start building your HTML pages. So let's get started. HTML, what is it and the purpose of it? Well, first of all, marks up and structures content in web pages. That's exactly, in a very simple words, and that's exactly what it is, a markup language. The only purpose is a structuring, of course, of HTML. Nothing related with the design of a page. That we will see later on when we look into another technology called CSS. So if there's one word that you should attach to the definition of HTML, it's just structure. Nowadays, of course, like every other technology out there, HTML has suffered major configurations over time since the beginning, and nowadays we have the HTML5 version with many tags, new tags, and others have been deprecated. We are, HTML is basically a text and tag, so it's a very simple document, and that was it's not by mistake, it's by design that it was invented like that. When Tim Berners-Lee was inventing the web, he was having one goal, and the goal was interlinking different documents around the world. So in one click, you could just get the resource that you need in order to continue, in order to read certain resource more in depth without even leaving the office. Of course, that was the goal. Hence the word hypertext in the HTML acronym. The extension, every time you see .html, well, that means that is a web page, so written in this markup language that we're learning. Of course, this is not the only markup language. Other examples of markup languages are XML, SGML, and others. It's important to mention that HTML, when Tim Berners-Lee was inventing the web, he needed also, he invented the protocol HTTP, which is how we deal with documents over the internet. And the HTML language itself was based on something that at the time, I'm talking about the early 90s, at the time was standardized globally, and that was ASGML for documents as well. So he liked the basic tags that was to be found in this markup language, and he used it. He kept that simplicity. So there you go. HTML, remember, it's just for structuring your page, making sense, describing your document. Okay, that's the only thing you are doing with the HTML. That being said, let's look into the how this markup language works. So you will see, if you open any markup language, you will find things like you are seeing now. This called tags. So when I say tag, this is what I'm referring. That this is a word between angular brackets. That's a tag. Most of the tags have a starting tag and an ending tag, or start tag, end tag. An end tag, the only difference between the start tag and end tag, as you can see, is this slash. Well, these are tags. We can also have empty tags, and empty tags look like this. So the only difference between these tags and these empty tags is basically what's in between. Here, between this start tag and end tag, we have the content that we want to describe in our document. Okay, so together, the tag, the content, and the ending tag, it's called an HTML element. And that is the slight difference between tags and elements, if you really want to be strict about it. Nowadays, in the web community, I constantly hear tags, elements being used interchangeably. So even me, if I say tags or elements, you know that I'm talking about HTML elements. If I need to be more specific, then I will tell you exactly what I refer to. But if I say in general terms tags or elements, I basically mean the same thing. Okay, HTML elements in general. Some examples of empty elements, you can find it in here, hr the slash, and that's it. And you will see that if you let the browser run this code, this markup language, because the browsers can understand HTML, then a horizontal ruler will appear. And in this other case, br tag, then a break will appear between in your code, in your page. Now, I will tell you also that if I have to categorize tags at the highest level, it would be the semantic tags and the structural tags. Semantic has to do with the meaning of something, like the word exactly is telling me, the meaning of a portion of content in your page. So by no means, even though you see horizontal ruler a line in the page by writing this HTML, by no means I want you to use this for styling your page. That is the responsibility of a different technology, of course, called CSS. Then we can deal with the structure of the general structure of any HTML page. And first of all, we start with an HTML tag, and that is the start of an HTML document. Then we do have a head and the body. So as I said, HTML is very simple, and the structure is also very simple. Okay. If you open your browser and the viewport, whatever you see on the viewport, which is the biggest portion in the browser, showing your document, whatever you see there goes under the in the body, between the body, starting tag and ending body tag. Yeah. What you see is basically defined inside this HTML element called body. Here, there is other data, like the metadata, describing the document as well, but is considered mostly metadata or data that you don't directly see it in the viewport. What you an example of this is a title. So it's the title of the document, and this, yes, you can see you can see it on the tab. If you open your browser, you can see on the tab a message, and that message would be is defined in the head, between the head in the head tag. So that's how it's done, in other words. In the body, of course, let's the magic start. If you do this, well, you have defined a heading 1 and heading 2 elements, and that only means that you already started defining your describing your document. This is the main heading. That would be the content of the tag, and this would be the content of this other tag. Simple as that. Okay. Then you can just extend it and then have a paragraph. This P stands for paragraph, and you can have another paragraph belonging to this heading. As you can see, very structured. The browser, by you typing these tags, the browser starts making sense of what kind of content you have in this specific document, your HTML document. And that's how those are basically the dynamics of HTML. A very straightforward document. Another important thing is the declaration of your HTML pages, because normally you once you describe your document, it's important to tell the browser what version of HTML tags you're using. Remember that we are busy already since 1993 with the web and HTML technologies, and a lot has changed and different versions have emerged. The HTML itself has evolved massively, so it would be nice if we help the browser, telling them, hey, here is I'm using HTML5 or HTML4 or HTML3. Well, most of the time you will end up declaring this line of markup language, and to tell the browser that you're using HTML5 tags. Remember, this is not a tag; it's just a declaration for informing the browser what a specific version of the HTML you're using, nothing else. And this goes in as the very first line of your document before even starting the HTML tag. That being said, let's start talking about the main tags. And these are the main ones. You can find more in detail explanation in the book. You can find also the references, webography, and bibliography in the end of the presentation. So let's start with the text tags. Here you can see some examples. On the right side, there is the markup, the HTML document, the code. And on the left side, you can see how it's rendered, how the browser would render that HTML doc. So as you can see here, we have some tags, and these tags are called semantic tags. For example, this is the paragraph. This is the del tag, stands for delation. This is the insertion tag, and you normally use the delation tags. You can actually see what the browser will render. Like it doesn't actually delete it, but the meaning of it is that you want to tell the user, hey, this was the word previously written, and now it's this one with a new insertion. So you can actually explain the reader, hey, this change has been made. So for your information, here it is. Yeah, it is not for design purposes that you're gonna use the tags delation and insertion. Okay, if design is the entire purpose, then you should look into CSS. Remember that. But here we're studying semantic tags. Another example you can see below, the laptop computer. Maybe this is a portion of I don't know, a web shop or any page containing items or marketing a product. So you can see laptop computer was $995 and now only $375. On the right side, we can see the type of tags being used and more paragraphs. And inside the second paragraph, you can see the S stands for strike through. And that's what you see here was strike. Mind you, this is different than the deletion. See, not only the visual, but well, actually the visual depends on the browser which implements HTML. But again, the important thing here, the thing that you need to notice is not the visual aspect, it is the meaning aspect. So this is another, strike-through is another semantic tag that basically tells you that something is no longer valid. Okay, in this case, the price in the past. So it could be tedious and confusing when using structural or semantic tags, and in combination with what visuals you want to visual goals or design you want to achieve. So the first thing is, first of all, if it's HTML tags, focus on the structure and the most accurate way of describing your document, and then you use and select your tags. If it's design purposes, then you should be worried about CSS, different technology, different document. Okay. Of course, there are many more text tags, so I'm expecting you to go more in detail in the book, looking at all the different tags. And in the webography, I put also some nice things that you can actually live test and try a little bit of those tags. Let's talk now about lists in general. There's another semantic tags. This is, in other words, you tell the browser, hey, I'm going to display a list. And then you have three options. Is it an ordered list, an unordered list, or definition list, which basically means the last one, like a dictionary-like thing. And the order and unordered, the only difference is basically the ordinal numbers here, nothing else. Very straightforward. This is an example again. On the right side, on the right hand, you see the HTML code, and on the left is what the browser renders. You can see, you first step. This is an unordered list example. You can define this. You can see the tags. The UL stands for unordered list, and then you define your items. List items. LILI stands for list items. And the interesting part here is that you can nest lists inside the other lists. So yeah. Again. The visual aspect is later on while learning CSS. You can even put your picture here, so it's like, don't worry about it. Now worry about the structure, and that's how you do it. Now this is my favorite tag, the anchor tag, and it's my favorite because of this was the goal of inventing the web. When Tim Berners-Lee invented the web, he had one goal in mind, and that's linking information, text basically. Hence the word hypertext, and that means rich text, and links are exactly that. And when he invented, he himself invented a couple of tags. The ones we saw, lists, for example, those basic ones. And this was, of course, the most the key one. A stands for anchor. A stands for anchor, and it must have a reference of course, to see where you are heading, to see what you are referring to, and that's called href. This if you notice, this is inside the opening tag or starting tag, and that's called an attribute. When you see attributes, you will normally see the name of the attribute, an equal sign, and then the value. So attributes come in that way. And between the quotes, that's the value of certain attribute. After this is the code, HTML. By the way, whenever I say HTML code, what I'm referring, of course, is this markup language. And this is what the browser will render. Visit font is, because visit font is the content of the whole HTML element. Okay, so that's what appears. That's what gets rendered here. And if I click, then I will jump to this external URI. By the way, that's the proper naming of a link. URI, Uniform Resource Identifier, since you are jumping or requesting a resource located somewhere in a server in the world. Whenever you start your anchor like this, given the full domain, then you are talking about an absolute URI. That's not the only way of referring to referring to URIs. There is also a relative way, and that comes in handy whenever you are referring to different pages of your same project, because the whole project, it normally gets hosted in one server, right? And you don't need to put the whole absolute URI again and again and again, the same, duplicating the whole absolute URI. The only thing you got to do is just referring to the name of the page, and because of the web servers nowadays work, they normally have default configurations with your home directories, and they already know where to find files. They will start looking into, they're smart enough to figure out what file you're referring when you just do the relative URI. Okay, this is an example of 3 links, and this would be what the browser renders. Okay, here you can see the break tag being used, but the only reason is like I'm just gonna separate I want the links to appear in this way and not next to each other, because then it's gonna be not only a little bit not understood well. Then we have images. And as you can see, an image, that's one of the questions I like to ask here is, what's the content of this HTML element? If you are thinking that this could be the content of this HTML element, then you're wrong. It's very deceiving because it looks like you are seeing so strongly something on the screen, and then you tend to say, this is the image, that's the content. As you can see, the image itself is an empty element. The source that you see here, SRC stands for source, alt is an alternative, title, and so on. These are attributes. And recalling from the previous slide, attributes come into name and value pairs. That's exactly what you see here. See, all of them the same, in the same form. But there is no closing tag for the image. So that's a nice example of an empty tag. In the source, of course, you point the image itself, what you want. Where is it? And the alt, I already mentioned, that's an alternative attribute. If for some reason the browser cannot load your image, then this sentence will appear instead. So that's a advisable tip for you to define this attribute in every image that you never know. You never know. If it doesn't get rendered, then at least the user will understand in words what's supposed to be there. About images, this width and height could be defined here. This is size in images is a very, very important topic on the web, because there are so many. This could determine basically the quality of your website. But the reason you see here width and height being defined is not for design purposes. Again, if you have design purposes entirely, you should go to CSS. That's a different technology. As I told you before. Sorry, the reason you see the width and height being specified here is that, of course, an image gets loaded way slower than the HTML itself, than the text, right? So by saying this, describing this, telling this to the browser, at least the browser could leave some space or allocate that space in your page until the image gets loaded. So this is basically for performance purposes and avoid lagging or some misdistribution space in the beginning. Talking about images, you know, the img tag was from the beginning a tag, but now, you know, like every image has a kind of some sort of content. Image was totally independent of text itself, but over the years, HTML5 has come with different tags that allow us to do things in a simpler way. One of those is a figure tag, in which you can just put an image and the caption of some text belonging to that image, and then you can just move freely the figure with that, and still the whole image with the letters or the context will still make sense. So let's work for you to do when you move the whole figure section or the figure tag better set. So those are HTML5 tags. I encourage you to use the HTML5 tags by trying them in the tutorials that is also in the end of the presentation, the W3 schools. And as I was saying, size of an image could actually define the quality of your website. So if you see something like this, we call it a squished issue. So or if something like that occurs, then the image probably is too small, and when you enlarge or zoom out, zoom in, then you will have this kind of issue. Again, we will tackle this a bit better when we talk about CSS, where you actually define the screens for you, or you target the screens, define your design, and based on the user needs. But as a general rule, for now, you can just create each image the same width and height as you would like it to appear on your website. So try to make the picture as in terms of dimensions as real as you wish to appear on the screen, the target screen. Then we have tables, and basically tables we need for displaying of data. Think about leaderboards, think about competitions. The table structure is pretty simple. You start with a table tag, then you define in a table row per row. This would be a row 15, 15, 30, and this would be a second row 45, 60, 45. And on the right you can see the code, table, table row, and the table data. Again, you finish the table row, then you start another table row, table data, table data, table data, and then you finish the second row, and then you finish the whole table. And this would be rendered by the browser. Then we have headers and spanning. How to do that? Of course, you can just upgrade the structure of the table by implementing table headers, like in this example. What you see here selected, this row, is the code that you see here. Okay. Of course, the whole table has more code, but that is the essential part. So table row, table header, you start here, Monday, and then you start there, geography, that's the second table data, math, and art, and then you close the table row. What you see here is, you can play with the content and the spacing that content is possessing. So the geography is basically containing two columns of space. That's called spanning. In this case, if geography takes the space of two columns, I will write a attribute with a value of 2 of called span. That's the attribute, and this is the value. Okay, and then this is the result. Of course, if you can do the called span, you could also do the row span. And in that case, if row span would be 2, geography will be taking 2 cells, but in this direction vertically, because it's row span. Okay. And of course, there is much more to say about the table, but you go a little bit more in depth and try it yourself with W3 schools, and yeah, try all the possibilities with the tables. Now forms, and this is very, very interesting, perhaps the most interesting part of HTML, since from the web application perspective, since this is how you gather data from the user. So you need a form. That's where the user can input his data, her data, and you can process it later on at the back end. So on the left, we have a form, a more advanced form than on the right. On the right, you also have only one input text control, but that's still a form. And here, more advanced, different type of form controls. But still, both are forms. Now, how does this work? Let's have a look. In order to create a form, you need different, for the specific data. Depending on the data, you need a specific form controls to help the user and of course, the developers to manage and to manipulate that data. So, for example, if you just want text, this is a text input type form control. If you want password, of course, you don't want the user to type without confidence, and this will hide if whatever text he is typing at the moment. Or for large text, you would use text area. For letting the user decide and giving them the limited or more options, this is what you use: radio buttons, checkboxes, or drop-down boxes. And for actual submission of the data, once they are ready, you just click and send the data to the backend for processing. Of course, that could be done by submit buttons or image buttons, which are basically buttons that allow images to be inserted or nested in the element tag. And also file uploads. If you want the user to send massive amount of data, like a picture, video, etc., then you need a file upload type of form control. If this is how forms look in HTML code, so basically you start. There's a starting tag and there's a closing tag, and whatever you put inside, it's called the form controls, or the input different input types that you want the user to be dealing with or giving us for process. Two things quickly here to mention. The form, you see the action attribute, and you also see another attribute called method. The action attribute simply tells you, hey, whenever the user hits the submit button, send the data to this specific address, to this specific document. The join.php, it's the script that will handle, receive and handle the data coming from the user. Okay? If it's a registration, for example, you will get a user and he will put, this script will put that new user, create that new user in the database and send a response like, congratulations or welcome, something like that. And the method is basically, in the web, we have two methods. For now, at the simplest level, you can send information via the get and via the post method. Let me keep it simple. The get method, you're going to use it for non-sensitive data. If it's a small amount of data, then that's what you use. Non-sensitive, that's what you use. So, yeah, because basically this is easy to notice in the URL. Okay, it's actually sent in the URL, this data. So if you are, for example, Googling a term, you can actually see in the URL the term that you're Googling. Okay, so that's of course passwords. When you're registering, a form should not contain passwords when sending the data with this method. That being said, let's have a look a little bit about this content, like what you put in terms of inputs controls or form controls. First of all, these are not all the types. This is just some samples, but all the rest work in a similar way. And I invite you and encourage you to practice with the resources that I indicate in the end. This is a text input of type. Sorry, this is a form control of type text. So when I say form control, what I'm saying is basically an input for the user. You will see that every form control comes in a way of a name and value. So name, value, pair, it's an input. Okay, and that's very important because in the backend, once you send information, data, the user's data to the backend, we will see later on how that is done when we study PHP. The way of accessing the value is by accessing the name. So here name, first name, you are referring to this, whatever data that the user puts in here. The value is empty, but that's the initial value. Once the user clicks submit, then that actual value will be sent to join.php in this case. Okay, so name value pairs. This is how you access. Next, you can see different type. This form control is of type radio, and radio basically look like this. Okay, this is for decision making form controls. You can see the name of that is gender and the value is male. The second radio, the name is gender and the value is female. At the moment that the user clicks submit button, the only one value will be sent. This is gender, but of course, because you can select only one out of many options, only one value will be sent by gender. Only one value will be sent, and that's the selected value for this name, for this variable, if you like, gender. Okay, and then last we have the form control type file, which basically allow us to send large amount of data throughout a form to the server. The moment that you have this type form control and the user clicks this button, the window, the browser file will appear. You select the file and you will send that specific file. How you get those bits and the backend, the join.php, will be determined by this, the name of the variable, the name of this form control, which is user upload. Important thing to mention here is if you are having a file type form control, then you definitely have to use the post, and it has to do with the limitations of the get. I told you for small amounts of data, you need to, I mean, you could use get, but if it's a large amount of data, then you need post, okay? Because the data is being sent, the get data is being sent in the URL, and as you know, the URL is limited in the amount of characters that you put in there. Let's talk about the video tag. In the past, and nowadays it's a very straightforward way that you use in order to embed video and reproduce video in your web pages. In the past, this was a pain in the ass. You had first to create animation, and there were tools for that like Flash, and then you had to create a little bit of programming, and to reproduce that you had to use also external software. Yeah, it was very famous and popular in the past, the Flash videos, but that was a lengthy process if you compare with what's possible now, what you're looking at in here. Well, but basically, if you want to embed some video, you will start with the opening tag called video, and then the closing tag, video, pretty straightforward. Of course, there are some attributes in which you can add some values to it, like controls, and you have a little bit more control of the reproduction of the video. For playing around, here is the link, and look more into, try it yourself. That's the best way of learning how to use this video tag. One important thing to mention here is, of course, not every video format is supported by every single browser out there. So whenever your video is not reproduced well, you need to look at of course, the format. And yeah, one little tip here, you can see the source is not actually an attribute, it is a tag inside a video tag. So this allows you to put the source of the video by using this attribute of the source tag. And there you can just put the location of the video. And of course, we can see here a .mp4 and .webm format. But as I said, you need to look into what's possible, what's supported by the target browser, and decide upon that. This only means here 2 sources possible. It only means that if the browser does not support the first one, then it's going to jump and reproduce the second video. So that's kind of a little trick if you like to make sure that the video is available for the users to reproduce. Well, look at the example, play around, and find yourself the possibilities. This is another, well, officially it's kind of a meaningless tag, but the reason we have this div task tag is because, yeah, we sometimes want to arrange categorize specific elements and put it into a container, so to say. This allows us also to specifically divide the whatever content you have on the page into different sections. So it, in terms of productivity, it's a nice tag to have. The downside is that quite personally, I've seen many sites, legacy sites, but still some modern sites abusing the use of div. So as a general rule, you should just use the div task. The div tag, if no other tag was possible for you to use. Okay, otherwise it becomes a little bit cluttered your page with divs. So in summary, it's just a container unit for your other tags. It does not have a specific meaning, so it's basically a structural tag. Yeah, if you want to divide your document into sections, this is an option. Since you can also in one go apply design to it later on when you are dealing with CSS. Here you can see a quick example that what's possible with divs. For example, the banner here could be a div containing the banner itself and some section for ads. Here you can say that this whole section could be contained by a div tag and so on. This could be another div and so on. Now talking about containers and layouts in your page document, these when it comes to HTML5 tags, you have the team of the guys, the W3C came with some solutions, so to say, some standards, that's a better word, in terms of depicting the layout of at least what you mean by certain sections in your page. So for example, if they realize that there are many websites out there were having in general this kind of layout, so what they created specific tags for this purpose. But remember that this is attached not only to structure the page, because that's what you can clearly see. Header is here, the footer is in the end, but it was for semantic purposes. So it's actually called semantic sectioning. So you can go ahead and use this. If you see the nav tag, you immediately, or the browser will understand all the items in there are navigational items, and like the menus, for example, in your web page, and so on. So you can go ahead and structure the layout already in this way using these tags. The browser will understand a little bit more about what an article is, because that's already standardized. But as I said, it's not mandatory. It helps, yes, to the browser to understand your content. But if you say like, no, I got used to the divs, and that's of course not wrong at all. But I encourage you to use the HTML5 tags. Another thing that I haven't actually talked about is here we can see the ID attribute, and that identifies a tag. So when you say ID equals whatever, that's the value, you can clearly identify a specific section of your page, or that element it's getting an identification, so to say. But yeah, in this case, what we try to represent here is like having div, since they are meaningless. You need to, every time if you're like using this for depicting layout or structuring it into sections, you need to put the ID always over the class attribute. There's also a class attribute for identifying and playing with this specific container. Now, if you have the HTML5 tags, well, that's no longer needed, because header is pretty distinguishable, as well as article, navigation, section is another one, and so on. Also, another interesting tag is called inline frame, iframe, and it's very simple. If you take imagine a piece of paper that you have in front of you, and then you just cut a hole, whatever in that page, and then of course you're gonna see through, right? And then instead of that, or in order to replace that eliminated piece of the gap that you have in the page, you come with a different document and then you put it into that gap. So you should look that field gap would be our iframe tag. Okay, so that's exactly the same that's happening in the in web pages. If you want to embed if you want to put another HTML document inside the page that you're seeing it, then you should apply this iframe tag. And here's the use. In this example, we are loading. This is a pretty typical example of it. You are using maps, Google Maps, for location of a specific page, some details about it, and then this is the code, how you do it. Iframe, of course, it has some attributes, the source of the other document to be filled in this gap, as I said before. So yeah, you can use that if you want other documents to appear in your own web page. One thing you should avoid, of course, is because when you do that, it looks like well, it is other document, but it looks like a little window there, and you see the scroll, or you could see the scroll controls, and then you are tempted to create layouts applying iframes all over your page. But remember that iframe, when you are taking iframes in your web page, you are creating gaps in your page. So you don't want to do that just in order for the user to navigate. Sorry, you don't want to do that for creating a layout. So I think, yeah, that is it. This is the bibliography of the lecture, and this is some bibliography. And please do some practice. This is just the general concepts. I hope you got some clarity in important aspects like semantics versus structural tags. And one piece of advice here to finalize this: use every time you finish or you have a project, HTML project, validate what your code, your MATLAB language. And this is a good source to do that. So if you go to the validator.w3.org, you copy and paste your page, and yeah, by giving the link, and it will tell you what's okay, what's not okay, and it will recommend you even if you are not following some standardization or you have minor errors, warnings, etc. This validator will tell you that. And of course, when I check your assignments, that's the first thing I do. I validate your websites using tools like these ones. I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you.